Hello everyone, thank you for joining me for another TLDR video. I am Voodoo Pickles and today we are going to be talking about Watch the Sky. Watch the Sky was written by Kristen Hubbard and published in 2015. And it was it's a middle grade YA book, which I did not know until I started reading it. And then I was like, oh, that makes more sense now. More sense. But it is a story that follows Jory. Jory is in, I can't remember if well, I think he's in middle grade, obvious. And he and his mother was a single mother, and she just took care of Jory when he was younger. When she met Caleb, she married him, and when they got married, they had a baby, and her and Jory went to move with him onto this large farm, and that's where they've been at. And then once they moved there, Jory was homeschooled, and this is the first year that he's going to be public schooled. So he is super nervous about going to public school. He's never been there. He's never had really friends before other than Kit, who was a girl that was found in their farm, and she doesn't talk. Nobody knows where she came from, and they won't call the authorities, the police, the Department of Human Services, Child Protective Services, anybody like that, because Caleb does not want authorities around or the officials knowing what's going on in his family. So they just keep her. They just keep Kit. And she grows up with Jory a little bit. She's been there for I think a year or two, and that's been his friend. They hang out, they're friends, there's a baby there, and now Jory gets to go to public school. Kit can't, and he's upset that Kit can't because she doesn't have any documentation. They can't put her in school. And before he goes to his first day, Caleb tells him that he needs to remember that they can't trust anybody. He can't talk to teachers or authorities at the school about his home situation, and he definitely cannot bring up Kit or his little brother. And that he just needs to be in school, blend in, but don't listen, but question everything. And think about everything before he talks about, think about everything before he answers questions, pretty much. And so Jory is very excited. He goes to school, and he finds he really enjoys school. And he meets a couple of other kids. I don't remember their names right now, but he meets a couple other kids. He meets the bullies at the school, and these other kids are trying to show him they're trying to be his friend. They're trying to be like, this is how things are here. And they think that a barn on his farm is haunted, and that's why nobody goes near the farm. Is that it's haunted. And Jory tells him no, it's not. But he likes having them there, but he remembers what Caleb tells him, so he's just like, I can't be friends with them. I can't be friends with them. I gotta keep them away. So he decides he's gonna avoid them. And the girl, I think her name is Maria, she decides she is not gonna be ignored by anybody, and decides that she wants to be his friend. So she just kind of bullies her way into being his friend, and he doesn't like it, but then he's like, all right, I like it, you're fine, we can hang out. And he's really enjoying his school life. He's trying to think of more things that he can interact with people with. He really wants to bring Kit into his friend group, but he doesn't yet because he's really worried that Caleb's going to find out and he's going to be punished. And Caleb likes to tell a story where he was in the military and in the Middle East, and while he was in the Middle East, he and him and I think it's squad or his fire team of people were in a firefight. And while this firefight was going on, his commanding officer told him to get into the fight and return fire. Caleb decided that he was scared and it was better for him to save himself. So he abandoned them, ran off, and hid. And when he hid, he hid until the firefight was over, and his whole squad was dead. And he likes to tell that story to Jory, Kit, and everybody, to tell them that you can't trust people and you always have to protect yourself. And he moved to this farm in the middle of nowhere because while he was in military jail for letting his squad die, he heard some concerning things and talk going on between the guards and higher ups that would be around the jail, and he said they ignored him most of the time, so he got to listen and hear all of these things. So he's just like, I have insider information that we are going to be bombed. And so he picked this area because it had a canyon that goes down right behind the farm, and he said the farm is going to be a perfect place for a shelter. And he doesn't tell Jory any of this. He only talks to his wife about this, Jory's mother, until his friends start picking on him for having a haunted barn and living on a farm that's haunted. And they keep telling him, like, well, how do you know? And he's like, I live there. And they're like, well, there's locks on everything. And he starts seeing locks on the barn. And he's like, what is Caleb hiding in there? Is it haunted? Is there something in there I shouldn't see? So he starts getting a little nosy, and Caleb shows him. He opens up the barn, and in there are these giant, they're like these Rubbermaid tubs. And each of these Rubbermaid tubs have labels on them, and it has like kit clothes, this to this. For the baby, it has baby clothes, this age to this age, then this age to this age, like baby clothes are. And there's just tubs of this, and there's like toiletries, there's kitchen supplies, there's all of these things in these tubs all stacked up. And Caleb tells him that he and his mother him and Jory's mother have been stockpiling all of this stuff for years. And that he tells him that there's going to be a bombing, there's going to be an attack, an incident to where there's going to be just mass devastation. And Caleb decided to protect himself and his family, that they're going to be in a shelter, and that they're going to put all of these things in that shelter, and therefore they're going to all be safe. And Jory is super surprised by this, very worried. He really wants to tell his friends that, you need to build a shelter or you're going to die, because that's what Caleb tells him. But Caleb tells him that you can't tell anybody. That would create hysteria. That would bring the authorities here. Officials would arrest me and your mom and take you, Kit, and the baby away, and then everybody would die. He's like, so if you tell them anything, that's it. We're all going to be dead. And it's a very terrifying thing to tell a child. So Jory doesn't tell his friends or anybody, and he's super depressed by this because he wants to tell them so that they can prepare themselves. And Caleb is always telling them that they need to watch the sky. He's very big on signs. So every time there's a newspaper, he pores over it. Every time there's radio broadcasts, he sits there and listens to it with a pen and paper to see if there's a sign that things are going to be escalating soon, that he needs to start protecting his family. And one night, there is a meteor shower. And when the meteor shower happens, Caleb wakes everybody up in the house, and they all go outside. They all see it. They watch these meteors fall down, and Caleb tells everybody that it's time. This is the sign they were waiting for. So starting from the next night, they start going down into the canyon towards the bottom, and they start digging. And Caleb tells them that they're going to keep digging into the side of the canyon, and they're going to build a shelter in there. And everybody has to work. They're going to work all night long. Caleb works at like a factory or something, and so they have a schedule for his mom, for Kit, and for Jory, and how they're gonna go through the schedule of digging out this shelter. And Jory's like, why are we doing this at night? Caleb tells him, so nobody can see us and nobody can stop us. And so they start doing this, and while they're doing this, Jory's super, super exhausted because he has to dig at night and then go to school the next day. And his friends start noticing that he's super tired. His teacher starts noticing he's super tired and very becoming more antisocial and not seeming to care about his schoolwork. So he calls the family home. And this freaks everybody out because they're like, what if they send somebody to check on us or check on him? So they start giving Jory more time off from digging the shelter to sleep. And this becomes their schedule. This is all they start doing. Kit and Jory's mother and Caleb dig more throughout the day when either Caleb's not at work, and so they're doing all of this. And Kit is, like I said, nobody knows where she came from. She just showed up one day, and she doesn't talk. And they have her there because they don't want to call anybody to be like, hey, there's a kid that just showed up here. I don't know if she's missing. I don't know what's going on here. And so because they never reported it, they don't want anybody to know she's there. And this Kit really makes Caleb nervous. She makes him very uneasy. He doesn't like to leave her alone with his baby. And he doesn't want her to touch the baby or anything, like be near him by herself. And while they're all digging one night, Caleb gets mad at Kit for, I guess, she was playing with the baby, and Caleb gets mad at her because she's really close to the baby unsupervised. And he tells her to go over there and dig. She goes over there and digs in a hole, and like a bunch of centipedes start coming out, and it scares her. She starts to scream. And nobody's ever heard her scream before, so it freaks everybody out. They finally get her to be quiet by Jory's mom runs over there and puts her hand over her mouth, and Caleb decides that, all right, she could have given away our position of what we're doing here. People could come here and be like, what's going on? And so the next day when Jory gets back from school, he tries to tell Kit what he learned that day because he's been sharing all this knowledge with Kit. And he sees that she's not there. He asks his mom, where's Kit? What happened to Kit? And she tells him that the authorities came and took her. That they don't know what happened, but somebody took Kit. And Jory thinks that it is his friend's parents that told, because he did introduce Kit to a couple of his friends, like Maria and one other friend, and told them, like, you can't tell anybody, like, just keep this a secret. And so he thinks that probably Maria told her family, and they called the authorities, and the authorities came and took Kit away. So he's super upset. He refuses to talk to any of his friends, and his schoolwork starts to go down again. And right before they start getting more calls from the teacher asking, is everything okay? And by that time, the shelter's almost done. So Caleb tells Jory that he's pulling him from school. He said it won't matter anymore anyways. And they clean up the house, and they're like, all right, everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. And there's like, everybody, check. He tells Jory to check the mail. Everybody get ready. Tomorrow or tonight, we're going to end up going down into the shelter. And they have it set up to where once he hits a certain beam at the entrance, it'll cause a rock slide on the outside of the shelter and kind of lock them in there. And then they can be in there for up to 6 months to a year. And they have all the supplies for that, and they'll be nice, safe, and snug there. And by that time, after that, they'll start digging their way out. And so he's telling them that night they're going to go into the shelter, they're going to lock themselves in. But he told Jory to check the mail, make sure that's empty so that people don't start noticing that they disappeared right away. So he goes out to the mailbox and he looks inside, and him and Kit previously, like a part of a thing that they would do, but they would build these little model houses, and they would paint them ridiculous colors and just have these little model houses that would build out of spare materials that they found around the farm. And he opens up the mailbox and he sees a small little model house, and it has Kit's name on the side of it, and he's really happy that he's finally hearing from her. And he looks on the other side, and there's a little note on it saying, I'm okay. And so he is very excited about that, but also very worried about what's going on. And on the way to the shelter that night, he starts questioning Caleb. He starts asking a lot of questions. He starts like pointing out inconsistencies of what Caleb is saying. And then he finds out that Caleb, because he did not feel comfortable with Kit around there, he started questioning on whether she would be a good addition to their shelter. He decided no, and he called the Child Protective Services and told them that he found this child on his farm. So they came, they picked her up, they took her away. And when Caleb tells Jory about this, Jory gets super upset. And then he tells his mom that we don't have to go into that shelter. He's like, I've been out. Like, I've seen the rest of the town. He's like, all of these people that Caleb told us were terrible people that would break us apart and separate us and have the authorities come and get us. He's like, they're really nice people. And he's like, if we ask them for help, I'm pretty sure they'll help us. Like, we don't have to go into the shelter. And he's like, I'm not going in there. And he refuses to go in. Caleb wants to hit him to get him to go inside, but Jory's mother stands in between them and she tells him no. And this is the first time that Jory's mother had ever told Caleb no. So he kind of pushes him back a bit. He's a little surprised by that. And then Jory's just like, we don't have to do this. We don't have to do this. And Jory tells Caleb that she's not going either. That she's not going to go into the shelter either. She's going to stay with Jory. So instead of doing anything else, Caleb decides, all right, deuces, y'all are fine. And he goes himself into the shelter, hits the beam, and the rock slide happens. And then Jory, his mom, and his little brother start walking up the little canyon, and that's where the book ends. And is it a totes or nope? I don't know. I rated this a 2 out of 5. It's a nope from me, but I wouldn't mind like my kid reading this book. I would just like to have somebody there to talk to him about it, because it's weird. I grew up on a reservation out in the middle of nowhere. I grew up being told, don't trust anybody, like especially the government. Do not trust them. They are lying to you. And backed up by broken promises and treaties and everything like that. So I grew up with a distrust of the governmental things. And I also grew up being told, don't trust anything at face value. Always question things. Always ask why. And especially to think before I said anything. Mostly it was manners wise, but it also was just like, otherwise you might end up sounding stupid. So I grew up in a household like that, around a community like that. And so I understood some of these things that Caleb was telling like Jory and his family, but at the same time I'm like, this is just like some weird prepper guy who thought he heard something. And I was in the military, so him finding out that he just like his whole backstory gave me the ick. And the way that him and Jory's mother got together was she was working as a waitress at night, and she would have Jory there, and she was not making a lot of money, and there was a man there that was trying to proposition her, and she said no. The man started trying to get violent with her in the restaurant while she was actively waitressing. And so Caleb got up and punched the guy in the face. And that's how they met. And then the next day, Caleb came back. And then the next day, he came back again. And then he asked her to marry him. Like, they had like 2 dates before he asked her to marry him. And she married him for security. Like that's what it is. She married him to be taken out of her current situation, to have security and to be able to provide for Jory. It tells us like a little bits and pieces in the book, and I'm like, see, I understand that, but at the same time I'm like, it's a weird for a middle grade book. I like the parts where he goes into school and he meets the other kids, and like they have this inclusivity with the children and how to make friends and how to be able to come a little bit outside of your programming to communicate more with people around you. And I'm like, I like that message part of it, but the way it was mushed together, I was like, okay. And then Kit was a whole thing. And this whole book was like a preview or like an introduction to Kit, so that you can go off to the author's next book, which just focuses on Kit. Which it makes sense after I read the book, and then it was like, oh, now you can read the next book focusing on Kit and her backstory. And I was like, I don't want to read a whole nother book just to find out that you did not give me basic information about this character in this book. And my kid likes character development. My kid really enjoys I like plots of books. He enjoys character driven books. So there's a lot of places in this where I'm like, I know he would had a problem with it and probably rolled his eyes and been like, I have questions. So I would, like I said, I wouldn't mind him like reading. I'm not going to stop my kid from reading any of these books, but I would have been like, all right, yes, you read this, but I also need you to have some context. I need you to understand here, because I tell my kid, don't trust people, don't trust things, situations, or information at face value. Like always make sure you're asking why. Like I raise my kid like that. So having it being like, no, that's a bad thing to do. I was like, wait. Yes, some of these things are bad. Like a lot of the things that are happening in this book are bad and shouldn't be happening. And I like that the kid broke out of that. But there's also some things that I'm like, this should be normal-ish, right? Like it's fine. It's fine to be inquisitive. It's fine to back up information. It's fine to not have that face value trust. So I don't know. I didn't enjoy it after I was reading it. I was just like, it makes me feel icky. It makes me feel icky in a way that I don't usually feel icky. So I gave it a 2 out of 5. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. If you want a more in-depth review of this book, definitely check the link in the description below. And my links for all my socials and everything are in that. Stick around, hang out, join. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.